Hey guys, Brian from Brian Boas here. We often think of the world of morph boas as being separate from the world of locality boas. But did you know there are quite a few examples of locality-specific morph boas? Today I'm going to give a survey of these locality-specific morphs, as well as show you some beautiful examples of these animals. If you want to learn all about keeping and breeding boas in captivity, be sure to subscribe to the Brian Boas YouTube channel right now, so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming boa videos. So first off, most if not all morphs of boas did originate as a pure locality form. There was a naturally occurring variant that occurred in a population of boas, and at the time it was a pure locality, but then this variant or morph was crossed with other types of boas to create these designer boas, and the locality specific nature was actually lost, since these are boas that comprise ancestry from multiple locations, so they're not really locality specific anymore. So that being said, there are some morphs which have been preserved as pure locality boas, or locality boas that have a variant that naturally occurs, which is effectively a morph. And I'm going to talk about those today, and I find this a really fascinating area because I know a lot of people are either on the morph boa camp or the locality boa camp, and there's some disagreements between the two sides, which I don't really understand all that much. Of course, there's pros and cons to both sides, but I think these locality-specific morphs really nicely bridge the divide between both camps. The first type of locality-specific morph I'm going to discuss is anery or anerythristic. And as you may know, anerythristic boas lack the red and orange and yellow pigments, so they have this silvery color appearance. And most of the forms of anerythristic are not locality specific, like the types you see in a lot of the morph boas. However, there are certain types that are locality specific, and this is one example. So these are Peregrinaria peninsula boas from Venezuela, and this is a fascinating dwarf locality boa that I've covered quite a bit in my previous videos. But right here, this is a normal coloration. You can see the browns and dark and light brown and creams and tannish colors, whereas the anerythristic form has a silvery gunmetal gray color. Very beautiful looking animal indeed. And so this is a pure locality specific Peregrinaria boa from Venezuela, but it has this anery variation. And there's a couple other types of locality specific anery boas, and this includes Nicaraguan boas as well as anerythristic Corn Island boas, and there's possibly some others out there as well. So if you know of any, just please add it to the comments. But remember, not all anerythristic boas are locality specific, but there are several different types of locality specific aneries. And these, of course, should be kept pure, and you shouldn't cross, let's say, an anerythristic Peregrinaria boa with a non-locality specific anerythristic boa, because then it wouldn't be a pure boa anymore. Like the non-locality specific anerythristic morphs, the Peregrinaria peninsula specific anery is a simple recessive trait. So, animals can carry the gene and have the normal coloration, and then you can breed two carriers together, or two heterozygotes together, to get the anery. So another example of a simple recessive morph boa that you see that's locality specific are some types of hypo or hypomelanistic boas. And one example are the hypomelanistic Sonoran desert boas. So that picture was actually a super hypo Sonoran desert boa. So this is a locality specific form of hypomelanism. And so like the non-locality specific form, you can have just your hypo, which has one copy of the hypo gene, and then you can have the super form, which has two copies. And so the super form of the Sonoran hypo boa is rather interesting because overall it looks somewhat like a Hog Island boa. It has similar coloration as a Hog Island boa, maybe a little bit more dirty looking overall, with more speckles and freckles and things like that, but pretty similar overall. However, the shape of the boa is different from the Hog Island boa. They have shorter heads than the Hog Island boas and generally more stocky bodies, but Really interesting type of hypoboa. I don't work with these animals anymore. I had some in the past, but I don't have any in my collection now. So another type of locality-specific hypo are the hypo Nicaraguans. And these are also quite striking, light colored boa, and you can also form the super form if you have two copies in the same animal. One type of hypo boa you see pretty often that I want to caution you about is called the hypo Hog Island boa. And the problem is that this is not a locality specific or pure Hog Island boa. So to make a hypo hog, people will take a pure locality specific Hog Island boa and they'll cross it to a non-locality specific common hypo boa, and they get this result called the hypo hog, which is really just 50% pure Hog Island boa. And so once you've crossed them together, you can never get the pure Hog Island boa back. So if you're looking to get pure localities, you definitely want to avoid these hypo Hog Island boas. And I know a lot of people have gotten taken in and bought them and then gone on to regret it. So just make sure you know what you're getting into if you buy a hypo Hog Island boa. It's not a pure Hog Island boa or a pure locality boa. The next type of locality-specific morph boa are the T-positive albino boas. And so as you may know, T-positive is tyrosinase positive, and these are albino animals that have a limited interruption of the production of the dark pigment melanin. So unlike the tyrosinase negative albino boas, which are completely lacking in melanin, the T-positive boas have a disrupted form of the melanin. So they have slightly darker colors overall than the T-negative, and they generally have these beautiful golden, brown, and yellow coloration. And so I actually don't have a locality-specific T-positive boa. I have a non-locality-specific T-positive. This is a VPI T-positive albino. And although these boas originated in animals largely of Colombian ancestry, they're not locality-specific, and there's no claim made that this is a locality-specific pure boa. It's a morph boa which has been crossed with lots of animals of lots of different ancestry at this point. However, there are some pure locality-specific T-positive boas. Two of the most commonly seen are Central American boas, the Nicaraguan T-positives, as well as the Costa Rican T-positives. And both of these types of boas have these beautiful light coloration and oranges and yellow colors that just really pop. They're really quite stunning to look at, almost incandescent. The colors are so bright and vivid. One other type of locality boa that has a T-positive form are the Argentine boas, Boa Constrictor occidentalis. And the T-positive albino has kind of a lightish tannish color with lots of white markings, which is much lighter than the wild type form, which, as you know, is mostly a dark brown or black looking snake. I thought I'd grab one of my Argentine boas and cover a couple different locality-specific morphs that occur in Argentine boas. And I don't have any Argentine morph boas, I just have the wild type form like you see here. But as I mentioned, there are T-positive albinos, which are locality pure. They're pure Boa Constrictor occidentalis. And there's a few other morphs, including the Argentine motley. And like the non-locality specific motley boas, the Argentine motleys have a reduced pattern, and they have this pattern of circles that goes down their back. But the coloration is pretty similar to the wild type Argentine boa. And there's another type of boa morph in Argentine boas. It's called the Max Pink. And this is really more of a bloodline. This is kind of a polygenic morph. You have multiple genes that give the color. But these Max Pink Argentine boas retain a lot of the pink color into adulthood. Most Argentines have some pink as babies, but then it fades as adults, whereas these Max Pink animals retain the pink. Personally, I think I prefer the wild type look in the Argentine boa, so I don't have any of the Argentine specific morphs in my collection. I just think the wild type is such a beautiful and striking animal. There's just no way you can improve on it. One locality boa that has just one morph that I know of is the long-tailed boa, Boa Constrictor longicauda. This, of course, is the non-morph, the wild type form. But there's a morph called the BCL0 morph, and the 0 morph has no dark pattern. So basically you just have a uniform tannish brown looking snake that has a little bit of dark speckling, but it doesn't have any of the regular saddle pattern as the wild type BCL like this one. And these animals are produced by a German breeder by the name of Hermann Stoeckel. And I don't know offhand if there's any in the United States. I know that they were just in Germany. But this is another locality specific morph to be on the lookout for. A question I get a lot is whether there's any morphs that are specific to the true red-tailed boas, Boa Constrictor, like this Suriname true red-tailed boa. And this, of course, is a non-morph, wild-type, pure locality Suriname boa. But there actually is one morph that's specific to the true red-tailed boas, and it's called the Parsons Guiana true red-tailed boa. And so this morph originated by the breeder Mike Eckert, and it's quite a striking looking morph. It's actually an incomplete dominant morph, which means that the animals that have just one copy of the gene have the phenotype, the physical characteristics of the morph. And so the Parsons Guiana boa has these clean overall look, and it's got these nicely peaked saddles, and the saddles are really well connected. So you can see this boa has kind of not very well connected saddles, but in the Parsons Guiana there's a perfect connection of the darker pigment between the two saddles. In addition, the animals have a ladder tail. When you look at the red saddles on the tail, they form these perfect square or rectangular shapes, and the white outlines form this perfect ladder pattern extending up the tail. And so when you breed two of the Parsons Guiana boas together, about 25% of the resulting offspring are the super form. They have two copies of the gene, and these animals actually have the ladder pattern that extends for their whole body. So rather than having saddles, they have kind of these square or rectangular blotches with perfect connections. They're quite unique looking boas. And that is a example, the only example I know of a morph boa that's specific to the true red-tailed boas. Another topic that comes up a lot in discussions is whether there's any albino forms of pure red-tailed boas. And the answer is that there have been a few examples of pure BCC albinos which have become available. And in fact, the last ones that I've seen available were just earlier this year. The South Florida reptile store, Snakes at Sunset, had a few examples for sale. And these are animals from pure Suriname bloodlines that have the albino gene. And it's a T negative or tyrosinase negative albino, not unlike this albino, but it's in a pure Suriname bloodline. And so these animals were for sale for $15,000 a piece. They were also selling hets from the same litter. And I don't know for sure who bought them or if anyone bought them. Maybe in the future there will be a line that's established that we will have some pure albino BCCs available. I know there have been a few animals which have popped up over the last few decades, and unfortunately it doesn't appear that any of them was successful breeding and starting a line of pure albino or pure BCC albino boas in captivity. The albinos you'll see on the market today are not considered locality specific, and although both the Call and the Sharp strain albinos originated in animals of Colombian ancestry, they've been crossed with other boas that are not locality specific, and they can't be considered locality specific today. They're of mixed ancestry. So I thought I'd get this guy out because he's actually a Call albino that's of 25% Guiana Boa Constrictor ancestry. And I know this because the breeder actually crossed a 50% Guiana boa that was het for albino with a 100% albino boa, and the result was this 25% albino or 25% BCC Cal albino boa. And so I bring this up because occasionally people do cross locality specific boas into morph projects, and there are mixed feelings about this. Overall, I don't think I would do it. I'm not completely against it as long as they're properly labeled and made abundantly clear. And then, as you can see, I do have a morph boa of mixed ancestry here, BCC and BI. But I don't think I would personally do it, and I obviously keep my locality projects completely pure. But the reason I bring this up is there's another way of making a almost pure locality specific morph, and that involves successive generations of crossing the morph boa into the locality specific background. And I bring this up because I used to work many decades ago in a biology lab with a lot of mice, and we would have mice that were from different strains, and a strain is kind of like a breed, like in a dog. But often we wanted to get a mouse that contained a certain gene into a different strain. And to do this, we would simply cross the animals of one strain with the mutation to the desired strain, and then we would cross those babies to the desired strain, and so on. And so if you do this one generation, you get a 50% animal that has 50% the desired strain. 2 generations gets you 75%. 3 generations gets you 87.5%, etc. And if you keep doing this for 6 generations, you'll get an animal that's about 98% pure of the desired strain. And you could hypothetically do that with boas. Of course, with these recessive mutants or recessive morphs, you would have to cross into the locality. Then you'd have to take the babies who are hets and breed them together to get the locality that has the morph, and then breed that back to the locality. So it really would be twice the number of crosses. And as you know, boas typically take at least 3 to 4 years to reach maturity. So this would take about 6 to 8 years for each generation. And so if you wanted to do this for 6 successive generations to get that 98% pure locality specific morph, it would probably take you on the course on the somewhere around 4 decades, 40 years to do this. So I don't think anyone really has the time to do this kind of breeding project. And also that would still only be 98% pure. And depending on who you talk to, that's still not a pure locality boa. It might be pretty much indistinguishable by all the methods we have available today, but it's still 2% that's not the locality. And I think most people who are locality collectors, they only want 100% pure. Even if it's 99.9%, it's just not the same thing. Of course, I'm not advocating breeding your morph boas with your locality boas and then backcrossing to the locality pure background to generate 98% pure locality specific morphs, but I thought I'd bring it up just for the sake of discussion. And I'd always be interested in hearing your reactions in the comments below. I also am pretty sure that I must have missed at least a few of the locality specific morph boas that are out there. So if you can think of some I missed, I'd really appreciate if you would comment on them below. I hope this was helpful. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks for watching and enjoy your boas.